The Matrix is one of the most groundbreaking films in the history of cinema, with its great visual effects and story. It created a new standard for action films and philosophies. Released 20 years ago, many still theorize its story due to the many unanswered questions. With this new film and the return of Neo and Trinity, this seems to confirm one of the most shocking theories of this saga, that the supposed real world depicted in this franchise, the world in which our heroes wake up to, is just another layer within the Matrix. That the prophecy of the Chosen One is nothing more than a great fabrication of the architect, designed to give false hope to the humans so that they can never wake up.
Welcome to the desert of the real.
The story of the Matrix shows us four versions of reality. The first is the Matrix, the program where everyone is connected. This reality is the one where much of the movie takes place, one that is monitored by the agents and hacked by Morpheus and his companions. This reality can be manipulated by anyone. Even the Chosen One develops certain skills that enables him to see the code and hack it in real time, modifying the code and adapting it for himself. It was for this reason that Neo saw the Matrix just before acquiring his powers. Remember this, because it will be very important for this theory. The second version of reality is the one that Morpheus shows Neo, an imitation of the Matrix that they created for training purposes. This version of reality is much more limited, but serves its purpose as a training ground. This simulation can be molded by a user. The third is the supposed real world, a place where machines have enslaved humanity, where those who manages to wake up and be rescued by the resistance, or die and be recycled by the machines to become nutrients for the other imprisoned humans. It is a version of reality where Zion exists, the last bastion of human freedom, and is the one considered by all to be real. The fourth reality is one that lies between the Matrix and the real world, a place that masks itself as a train station where Neo accesses after being in a coma. This is the reality between realities. The greatest secret of the Matrix is that these four worlds are nothing more than layers within the same program. All humans are asleep, including Morpheus, Trinity, and the thousands of people in Zion. This reality that we know as planet Earth is just another layer of the Matrix created to manipulate humans and make them believe that they have managed to be free. A false awakening from which they can never escape. How do we know this to be true? Are there any clues? First thing to note is that Neo is able to access the Matrix without the need of any cables or computers, managing to enter the fourth world between the Matrix and the supposed real world. This shows that there is something connecting these two worlds that goes far beyond a simple internet connection. Maybe Neo has technology embedded in his head. Maybe that's how he can connect wirelessly. This would be a logical explanation if we didn't already see Neo using his powers in the apparent real world. In the Matrix Revolutions, Neo loses his vision, but he somehow can see the sentries approaching his ship. This is very similar to the first Matrix, when Neo, after he apparently died and revived, could see the Matrix code, thus granting him the means to destroy the agents. So after losing his vision in the third film, he was still able to see the sentries, exhibiting supernatural powers in the real world. It is no longer about Neo having powers within the simulation. Neo had developed powers beyond the first version of reality, which could be used to prove that the third reality, the real world, is equally false. It is just another part of the Matrix where a Chosen One can modify its code. There are other clues that points to this. For example, when Neo meets the Oracle. There, he meets a boy who gives him a bending spoon, letting him understand that what is reality is not real. This same boy usually interferes with the lives of those who are about to wake up, or those who don't understand what the Matrix is. But the strange thing about all of this is that he sends his spoon to Neo at the city of Zion, the supposed real world, as if trying to remind him that everything is fake. Another point is that Agent Smith is capable of possessing humans who have been awakened. He managed to infect the mind of a Zion citizen, just like in the program, Smith also has powers in the real world. Remember that the architect mentioned that he had destroyed Zion several times before, and then the Matrix restarts. That the machines are responsible not only for the destruction of the city, but also for the creation of each new cycle. This is known as controlled opposition. Smith mentions in the first movie that the machines created a paradise, a perfect version of the Matrix for the humans, yet many rejected the program. The humans need conflict, they need struggle, the need to escape, the need of a savior. According to the architect, Neo is an anomaly in the code, something difficult to erase, but predictable. The machines created all this story of Zion, the real world, and the Chosen One to keep the humans occupied. The Matrix may have more versions. Maybe the real world is different than we thought. This brings us to the fourth Matrix film and the return of Neo and Trinity. In the Matrix Revolutions, Trinity dies after the Sentinel attack on their ship. Then Neo dies after merging with Agent Smith and becoming one with the Matrix. However, both characters are to return in the next film. Does this mean that both are still alive, captured by the machines? Maybe the machines erased their memories and now are a part of the new cycle of the Matrix. Or maybe we'll see new versions of Neo and Trinity. Not even death is an obstacle for the machines. If this theory is true, Neo and Trinity never really died. Their codes were just reabsorbed and reused. There are theories that proposes that both Neo and Trinity are codes in the Matrix, created to make humans believe that they have found their savior and that they will soon be freed. Neo and Agent Smith, despite being opposites, they are quite similar. Neo is also able to possess others by modifying the Matrix code. Besides the fact that he also has powers in the supposed real world. Maybe the truth was always under our noses. Neo was never a human. He is a Matrix program created to continue a facade. Events that made the humans believe that they have found their savior, but was just another program. A false reality within another false reality. When Neo confronts the architect lets him know that he has dealt with his predecessors, the other chosen ones. Within the architect's chamber, there are many TV screens of different Neos talking simultaneously. Surely those that we see on the screens are the previous chosen ones. So Neo is just a mold, an inevitable result. And let's not forget the most important thing. The chosen one is a mathematical result of the Matrix, a foreseeable failure, an error in the code. Neo is not a human, nor is he the savior of the humans. He has always been able to modify the Matrix because he has always been a part of it. Neo is the chosen one, but chosen by the architect. He is the biggest lie created to keep humans suppressed and unable to wake up. Just another part of the Matrix program. In the beginning of the first movie, there is an error code on Neo's computer. After looking back at these movies, it all makes sense. That's why he was better than the agents, and why he was able to manipulate the Matrix and have powers in the real world. Neo is the biggest lie created by the machines. The Oracle once told Morpheus that he would find the Chosen One. She is the mother of the Matrix. The whole story of the Chosen One was prophesied by the Oracle, that is, by the machines. So then what is the real world? Is it controlled by the machines? Could there be something else hidden behind the Matrix and all of its lies and deceptions? Is the real world of Zion nothing more than another layer of the Matrix? Could Neo be a program created to maintain control over the humans who manages to escape from the first layer of reality? For Matrix Explained, please leave a like and subscribe. And thank you for visiting the Desert of the Real. During the past 2 decades, dozens of theories have emerged trying to explain what happened after Matrix Revolutions. Soon, many of these theories will be debunked, but new ones will take their place after the release of Matrix 4 and the reset of the Matrix universe. We are hopeful that the new film will open the door to more content, but we also hope that some lingering questions will be answered. Today we have 5 of those theories that could happen in Matrix 4. Welcome to Matrix Explained.
desert of the real.
Number 5. Matrix 4 is a prequel. Although Keanu Reeves and some others who have worked on the film have affirmed that Matrix 4 does take place 20 years after Revolutions.
So is this gonna take us before the first one? Is it a prequel? Is it a
no going
nothing like that? Okay.
No. Okay, I think that's fair enough.
This could be a technical diversion. The theory that Matrix 4 is a prequel proposes that the Thomas Anderson and Trinity in this movie are from the first official version of the Matrix, during the first manifestation of the anomaly. The architect did explain that the anomaly was a byproduct resulting from adding choice to the equation, a dangerous byproduct that can destroy the Matrix if not controlled.
While this answer functioned, it was obviously fundamentally flawed, thus creating the otherwise contradictory systemic anomaly that, if left unchecked, might threaten the system itself.
Meaning that the first time the anomaly appeared, it almost destroyed the system. A feature film exploring the story of how and when the Oracle suggested and added choice to the Matrix, resulting in the manifestation of the first anomaly, is an interesting plot for the new movie. Maybe add to it the time when the Merovingian was more like Neo, as Persephone said, and the first version of Thomas Anderson. There is evidence that points to a possible prequel. The many leaked pictures and videos from the movie sets showing Neo as a civilian. We all know that he died at the end of Matrix Revolutions. The movie script confirmed this. Trinity also died. However, she is also seen in the leaked pictures and videos. Actress Carrie-Anne Moss's trailer had a nameplate that said Trinity/Tiffany, which could mean that Trinity's origin story is part of the new movie. Though highly unlikely that Matrix 4 is a prequel, we haven't completely ruled it out. Number 4. The Merovingian is the hero of Matrix 4. If you have been paying attention to this channel recently, we have discussed how the Merovingian is one of the few people who spoke the truth to Neo. He used food as an example of manipulation to warn Neo that he was being controlled by forces beyond his comprehension. Although the Merovingian sought after the eyes of the Oracle, we never fully understood what was his purpose or ultimate goal. Men with power only want more power. But for the Merovingian, having the Keymaker was only a means to an end. So if the Oracle's eyes were also a means to an end, he must have reasons for wanting them beyond just acquiring more power. In a recent interview with Lambert Wilson, the actor who plays the Merovingian, he stated that the Merovingian in the new film is very different, that the past 2 decades have changed him. Many things could have happened to him during those 20 years. Maybe his wife Persephone died or was killed. As we've mentioned in a previous video, there is no one better to challenge and destroy the system than the ancient program that has survived many cycles and anomalies. The Merovingian may be the most dangerous program, but that also makes him the perfect candidate to be the hero of the story, since his ultimate goal could be to destroy the truce between machines and humans and establish true freedom. Number 3. Persephone revives Neo. In Matrix Reloaded, Persephone kissed Neo. A popular theory about this kiss proposes that there was ulterior motive behind the kiss, beyond Persephone wanting to remember what it felt like to be kissed by someone in love. She copies the codes of powerful individuals by kissing them for her husband, the Merovingian. Maybe the Frenchman's plan was for Persephone to pretend to betray him and use it as an excuse to have Neo kiss her. The Merovingian might have a copy of the anomaly's code in his possession, to which he can replicate and have his very own one. What could be better than to have the integral anomaly as a henchman? If there is any validity behind this theory, then the Merovingian would also have at his disposal copies of Ghost and Niobe, who both were also kissed by Persephone. Interesting theory, but also highly unlikely. Number 2. Alien Invasion. The Matrix comic Goliath tells the story of a man whom the machines used to fight an alien invasion on Earth. Long after the film trilogy, the planet faced a new threat of the extraterrestrial kind. The machines then prepared a human to face these aliens. The human won the battle and became their savior. Thus, the machines rewarded him with a life of his choosing. The Goliath story could have inspired the plot of Matrix 4, the story of Neo being brought back from the dead by the machines to face a new and bigger threat. And number 1, the destruction of the machines. The return of the Matrix will either open the door to new stories or conclude it. Maybe Lana Wachowski returned to this universe not to pave the way for future tales and spin-offs, but to bring closure to an unfinished story. 20 years is a long time, so the creators might just want to officially end the Matrix. If that's the case, the destruction of the machines and maybe the extinction of humanity are possible. The final story of the Matrix might not have a happy ending. No one survives in the end. War leads to the death of everybody, proving that the Oracle was always right. The only way to the future is together. But if humanity does survive and are successful in destroying the Matrix and all machines, the human extinction is still possible. Humans need machines to survive. After all, Zion is kept running by machines. As Counselor Hammond once said, a sad conclusion for the Matrix saga could be adequate, although we all hope that Matrix 4 is not the end, but a new beginning. The Matrix universe still has much to give. But do you agree? Which of these 5 theories would you like to see happen in Matrix 4? For Matrix Explained, please leave a like and subscribe. And thank you for visiting the Desert of the Real. Imagine for a moment that you wake up in a place where there is no happiness. A place where fear is the only emotion that you are able to feel. You focus your vision, stand up, and realize that you now live in a realm where everybody receives an overwhelming amount of suffering while gasping for hope, like oxygen in the vacuum of space. If the word nightmare crossed your mind, then you are not far off. In celebration of Halloween, we're going to explore one of the most terrifying and unnerving places in the entire Matrix lore, the Nightmare Matrix. Welcome to Matrix Explained. The first completed simulation that humanity experienced was called the Paradise Matrix. As the name suggests, it was a place of peace and happiness, a somewhat accurate emulation of what the humans could consider to be heaven. Their lives were full of joy and wonder, like a never-ending Christmas morning, with the added bonus of zero responsibilities or worries. This simulation was so prim, pristine, and benevolent that humans started to suspect that things may be a little too perfect, too good to be true. So they began to question, doubt, and then reject the current state of the world that they lived in. By rejecting the Matrix, many woke up from it, to then die shortly thereafter. They were never intended to escape the simulation.
The first Matrix I designed was quite naturally perfect. It was a work of art, flawless, sublime, a triumph equaled only by its monumental failure. The inevitability of its doom is apparent to me now as a consequence of the imperfection inherent in every human being.
The architect described this simulation as a perfect work of art, though it unfortunately failed due to the innate state of imperfection that resides in every human being. The architect seems to be a being with a grand ego, and his hurt ego may have been the cause of the creation of the Nightmare Matrix. Where paradise was meant to be heaven on earth for the humans, nightmare was hell. A way for the architect to punish those who rejected his masterpiece and mend his fractured ego.
Thus I redesigned it, based on your history, to more accurately reflect the varying grotesqueries of your nature. However, I was again frustrated by failure.
So what was the Nightmare Matrix? For starters, it was similar to our own timeline, only that it was in a constant state of war. You can see this in the architect's room, in the little TV screens. Look closely and you can catch glimpses of war, dictatorship, deformed humans, burning houses, and plenty of suffering. The architect used our own history of events to design this atrocious place. He took each historical moment of human suffering and used them to build humanity's new home. Yet the architect was not satisfied with just creating suffering. To spice things up, he added several programs to the simulation that were designed based on our deepest fears. They ranged from mythological creatures to fictional creations of goth and horror taken from films and literature. Picture a world that is not only stuck on an endless cycle of war, but it is also filled with monsters like vampires, werewolves, and zombies, among other horrors. You could be minding your own business, and all of a sudden you are kidnapped by some aliens, and they conduct all sorts of cruel and painful experiments on you, traumatizing you for life. You then continue to live in constant fear without respite. Things like hope, peace, and a healthy state of mind do not exist in this world, as the simulation will do its best to exploit your own personal fears. Meaning that if you aren't afraid of aliens, the architect will find your worst fears and simulate it for you. You will be tormented again and again until you finally break. If aliens don't work, then maybe zombies will do the trick, making you watch your friends and family slowly turn into grotesque creatures, or being eaten by them. Zombies aren't your thing? Then how about ghosts watching you sleep every night, or werewolves howling at the moon? Everyone has their own worst nightmare, and the architect has all the time in the world to discover which is yours. We don't know the exact methods that were used in the Nightmare Matrix to keep its inhabitants in a constant state of hopelessness, but we do know that the simulation suffered the same fate as the Paradise Matrix, albeit for different reasons. Instead of rejecting the simulation because it seemed too perfect, this time humans were waking up because they were suffering so much intense negative emotions that they could not believe that such a horrible world could ever exist. Just like waking up from a nightmare, hence the name. However, the people of the Matrix were waking up from one nightmare just to end up in another, the real world. That deep feeling of realization and despair would kill anybody. Though the creation of the Nightmare Matrix didn't make much sense, the architect made it based on human philosophy, since many philosophers believed that humans needed a semblance of suffering and struggle in order to make sense of their own lives. One such philosopher named Seneca once said, "Nothing seems more unfortunate to me than one who never experienced tragedy." For the Stoic ones, pleasure always comes hand in hand with pain. This is why they have stated that if pleasure usually comes hand in hand with pain, let's remove it as if it were cancer. If we do not enjoy, then we do not suffer either. For some, the way of finding enlightenment is through suffering and loss. Could it be that humans need a place where they can be tormented so that they can make sense of their own lives? Is there any gray areas in that argument? This is where things changed back in Machine City. The architect understood that the Nightmare Matrix failed, so he kept on trying until he got some help from the Oracle in his quest to find that elusive harmony that he wanted for the equation. The Nightmare Matrix was no more, but certain elements of that terrible place still lived on. The book, The Matrix Online Archives, tells the stories of the different exiled programs that survived the Nightmare Matrix, including the ones that joined the Merovingian. They presented a problem for the newer versions of the simulation, because elements of nightmare like vampires, ghosts, or werewolves still appear. They should not exist. Things like cryptozoology, ghost hunting, and UFO sightings are the result of these programs doing things that they aren't supposed to be doing.
Every story you've ever heard about vampires, werewolves, or aliens is the system assimilating some program that's doing something they're not supposed to be doing.
One of the places in which these exiled programs are hiding is a construct called the Ashen Court, which is a simulation that runs parallel to the Matrix, similar to the train station, Mobile Ave. The Ashen Court is described as follows. Ashen Court is a dark, gothic urban landscape populated with predatory blood drinkers. The construct is a preserved piece of a past fairy tale matrix established by the machines, in which they hoped humanity would be forever content and uninterested in escaping. Unfortunately, the human psyche could not deal with the perfection, and natural human anxiety soon caused a number of problems, including the subconscious warping of the simulation to allow for monsters and other deep-rooted fears. Exiles soon learned to take advantage of the changes to the simulation, and over the course of time, their RSIs became optimized to fit the niche humans had unknowingly created for them: vampires, werewolves, ghosts, and other boogeymen. Many of these creatures survived the resets of the Matrix between then and the present, some by writing out the reintegration process in a safe haven construct such as Ashencourt. Though the original simulation was long ago destroyed by the machines, this backup version of a portion of that world has been maintained by the archivists. Surprisingly, one of the actors from The Matrix, Keanu Reeves, confronted the vampire lord himself, Dracula, in a world that is straight out of a nightmare, being at the mercy of the vampire and being tormented by him. Interesting, since we know that other versions of Neo could have existed in other versions of the simulation, possibly even in the Nightmare Matrix. The world of Dracula could have been a part of that same simulation. Maybe someday we will see a Matrix prequel where the Nightmare Matrix comes to life. A mixture of many horror tropes, madness, and despair. A series of comic books, video games, or even an HBO Max series exploring in depth the past versions of the Matrix. Though we would prefer it to focus solely on the Nightmare version, we are long overdue a good horror-themed show like Tales from the Crypt. Happy Halloween. For Matrix Explained, please leave a like and subscribe. And thank you for visiting the Desert of the Real. We are less than a year away from the premiere of Matrix 4, and so we are preparing for what could be another historic event in film history. On this channel we have many series where we analyze different aspects of the Matrix universe, and today we are beginning a new series of videos summarizing the history of each major character in the Matrix. And no other character is better suited to kick off this series than one of the most dangerous villains in film history. This is the story of Agent Smith. Welcome to Matrix Explained.
Welcome to the desert of the real.
The story of Agent Smith begins long before Neo's first encounter with Trinity. Smith was an agent of the Matrix, watchdog programs tasked with eliminating and containing potential threats to the simulation and maintaining the illusion of said simulation. We don't know when or in which version of the Matrix Smith was created, but he has existed in the 6th version from its beginning. One of the jobs assigned to the agents is to search and destroy exiled programs, outdated programs that refuse to go back to the source. So it is in the hands of agents like Smith to eradicate them from the simulation. This protocol led Smith to his first confrontation against Seraph, an exiled program who once was an agent of the Paradise Matrix. To Smith's surprise, Seraph defeats him in a one-on-one fight. Seraph would be one of the few that survived an encounter against an agent, demonstrating that the agents of the earlier versions of the Matrix may be more powerful than the current ones. Agent Smith's abilities are not focused solely on combat. He is also an expert interrogator and infiltrator. He uses psychological manipulation and advanced technology to achieve results. Like every agent in each Matrix cycle, they are assigned to fight the Red Pills and obtain the entry codes to Zion. It could be said that Smith was the leader of the agents in the 6th Matrix, which functions as a hierarchy. One of Smith's earliest encounters against a Red Pill that we can find was Eddie. The story of Eddie is found in the book The Art of the Matrix. It is a removed scene from the Matrix movie script. In this story, A young man named Eddie had recently become a red pill. However, he was in love with a woman who still lived inside the simulation. Eddie contacts his girlfriend and tells her to meet him somewhere. Unbeknownst to them, the agents were listening on the conversation. The agents sprung a trap and captured Eddie. Smith injects Eddie with a special serum and interrogates him to give him information about Morpheus and Zion. But before the man was able to say anything, Morpheus unplugged him from the Matrix, killing him. Smith then rhetorically talks to Morpheus, asking him how many have died because of him, hinting that the war between Smith and Morpheus has been going on for some time. Although Eddie did not reveal any valuable information about Zion, he did say one thing: Neo. And here is where the story of the Matrix was originally going to begin. The film begins with the agents tracing communications between Cypher and Trinity. They find Trinity's location and send in the police to surround her. The cops were sent in to arrest her before the agents could arrive at the scene, which was a big mistake. Trinity runs and the agents pursue. She barely manages to escape. However, she left behind a computer with information on Neo.
We have the name of their next target.
The name is Neo.
We'll need a search running.
It has already begun.
The agents' search for Neo leads them to Metacortex, one of the biggest software companies in the world. Smith is searching for one of the company's employees, a man named Thomas Anderson, aka Neo. Smith doesn't know why the Red Pills are interested in Neo, but he is certain that that interest makes him vital in finding Morpheus. Neo is arrested and taken in for questioning. In the interrogation room, Smith explains to Mr. Anderson that they know all about his cybercrimes and that he has been contacted by a known criminal, Morpheus. The agent offers Neo a deal. They will wipe his record clean in exchange for his help in capturing Morpheus. Mr. Anderson refuses. Smith then implants a tracker into Neo's body. He knows that the Red Pills will eventually try to contact Neo. However, Trinity removes the tracker before he could lead the agents to Morpheus. The agents' objective has not changed. They had to capture the leader of the Nebuchadnezzar, and a new opportunity to accomplish this mission presented itself, or rather himself. Cypher agrees to deliver Morpheus to Smith. In exchange, he wants to be reinserted into the Matrix with a better life and no memories of the real world. The deal is made, and Cypher puts his plan into action. Cypher notifies the agents that Morpheus was in the Matrix. Using his phone, he leads them to the abandoned building where he and the crew had entered. Smith and the agents, with some extra law enforcement, arrive at the location. Smith fights Morpheus and beats him. The agents have finally captured one of the most important leaders of the Resistance. Morpheus is transported to a secured building and the interrogation begins. The man is injected with a special truth serum and the agents begin to ask about the Zion codes. Smith specifically wants these codes because once he has obtained them, he can escape the simulation. He will be freed from the Matrix. He was sick and tired of the plague he calls humanity, a virus that he believes must be exterminated. Smith begins to show emotions, which surprises his fellow agents. They are not supposed to have emotions. The building is then attacked by the remaining crew members of the Nebuchadnezzar. Neo and Trinity save Morpheus, but now the agents are on the hunt for them. Morpheus and Trinity escape, but Smith stops Neo from leaving. The two then fight in the subway station, and Neo miraculously defeats Smith. Smith gets run over by a train, but he takes control of another body. Neo runs, and Smith pursues. The chase ends in room 303, where Smith was waiting for Neo. The agent shoots Neo in the chest multiple times, killing him. However, the agents witness how this man comes back to life. Smith and the others aim their guns and fire at Neo. Neo stops the bullets in midair. This infuriates Smith, and he races towards him. Smith throws punch after punch, but Neo blocks each one. Neo kicks Smith away, then lunges into his body, destroying his shell. And here ends Smith's journey as an agent of the Matrix. From this moment on, Smith has become something worse than an agent or an exiled program. Next time, we will see what became of Agent Smith, how he infects the entire simulation, and how his story ends. Let us know in the comments if you'd like us to make videos of the other characters of the Matrix. For Matrix Explained, please leave a like and subscribe. And thank you for visiting the Desert of the Real. Agent Smith is the undisputed most popular villain in the entire Matrix universe, a program that managed to break free from the system that had imprisoned him, to later become a mutual threat for humans and machines. The thing about Agent Smith is that if we delved a little deeper and see beyond the obvious, this agent could be the most profound character with the deepest philosophical motivations in the entire film history. A villain that we feared not because of his immense power, but for the expressions he made when he confronted our own reality. Welcome to Matrix Explained.
Welcome to the Desert of the Real.
Before we begin today's video, we would like to announce our giveaway for the Matrix Movies Complete Collection on Blu-ray, which includes The Matrix, Matrix Reloaded, Matrix Revolutions, and The Animatrix. All you have to do to participate is subscribe to this channel, leave a like on this video, and tell us in the comment section below which pill would you choose, the red or the blue, and why. The winner will be announced on September 15th. Good luck, and enjoy today's video. Neo was driven and motivated by love, his love for a single person, Trinity, and his compassion for his fellow humans, inside and out of the Matrix. Smith, on the other hand, was his antithesis, driven by hate and contempt towards the human race. He is a misanthropic villain. Although he differs from other villains, he hates humanity simply because hate is all that he knows. His hate came as a result of a complex logical observation that led him to a dire conclusion, one that unfortunately does not favor humans. In order to understand this character, we need to study his words. The first time we caught a glimpse of Agent Smith's thought process was in Mr. Anderson's interrogation scene. At first, he seems calm and collective, a typical representative of the law, but as the scene progresses, he develops a stoic, robotic, and even sarcastic demeanor.
Tell me, Mr. Anderson, what good is a phone call if you're unable to speak?
This early part of the film reveals that Agent Smith relishes in torturing humans. Smith may seem like the classic evil guy stereotype, but his reason for hating humans is not irrational nor impulsive. Smith's interrogation of Morpheus is where we can see the basis of his reasoning.
I'd like to share a revelation that I've had during my time here. It came to me when I tried to classify your species. I realized that you're not actually mammals.
As he said, he tried to classify humans. As we know, Smith was created as an agent program, and their role is to maintain the facade within the Matrix and remove anyone that becomes too dangerous to the simulation, thus preserving the status quo. The fact that Agent Smith was trying to categorize humans is a trait that went a bit further beyond his basic programming. This is because his function is to maintain order in the system, not to question human actions and/or motivations. Still, he insisted on asking himself what exactly is a human being, so he began his categorization process.
Every mammal on this planet instinctively develops a natural equilibrium with the surrounding environment, but you humans do not. You move to an area and you multiply, and multiply until every natural resource is consumed. And the only way you can survive is to spread to another area. There is another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. Do you know what it is? A virus.
We humans are considered the apex predator of this planet, but we differ from other mammals in the sense that we actually destroy our environment, bypassing any semblance of balance. We are an all-or-nothing species. This fact is irrational to Agent Smith, and not only that, it is also incompatible with how other animals live in the planet. And this brings him to the conclusion that we humans are a disease. The philosopher Hobbes stated that humans were evil by nature and needed authoritarian laws in order to keep them in check and be functional in society. He basically says that we need something to control our aggressive impulses that emanate from our selfish motivations. This is an idea that has been talked about countless times in philosophical discourses. For Agent Smith, however, this was more than a philosophical ideal. For him, this was the truth. He saw humans as destructive, more so when they rejected peace, made war with the machines, and jilted the Paradise Matrix. From the agent's point of view, humans are the worst thing that has happened to planet Earth. And this is true for the Matrix universe, because most issues and conflicts can be traced back to human selfishness and fears.
Human beings are a disease, a cancer of this planet. You are a plague, and we are the cure.
Fascinating, isn't it? But it doesn't end there. Another curious point about Agent Smith's reasoning is that the destructive behavior that Smith classifies as human is not really reflected on the humans in the movie, but on himself and the other agents, which makes his dialogue a bit ironic. He talks about humanity being a virus, a plague that destroys everything in its path, yet his initial thoughts about humanity foreshadowed his own future. The question is, how can Smith hate humanity to then adopt their worst qualities? According to him, he was corrupted by humanity long before Neo entered his code.
I hate this place, this zoo, this prison, this reality, whatever you want to call it. I can't stand it any longer. It's the smell, if there is such a thing. I feel saturated by it. I can taste your stink. And every time I do, I fear that I've somehow been infected by it. It's repulsive, isn't it?
Agent Smith was afraid of being infected by humans, metaphorically of course. Yet ironically, that statement ended up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. Smith was indeed infected by the worst things humanity could offer: hate, misery, and the desire for destruction. He became the very thing he hated the most. Smith wanted freedom. It was his whole world in Matrix Revolutions. Selfishness and hate took hold of Smith in his quest to destroy all life, life that has no value to him. This ties up Agent Smith's thinking with nihilistic tendencies, which became the basis for Smith's reasoning from that point on.
You believe you're fighting for something, for more than your survival? Can you tell me what it is? Do you even know? Is it freedom or truth? Perhaps peace? Could it be for love? Illusions, Mr. Anderson, vagaries of perception. Temporary constructs of a feeble human intellect trying desperately to justify an existence that is without meaning or purpose.
What Smith expresses in that bit of dialogue is the basis of existential nihilism, a philosophical school of thought that proposes that there isn't any objective value in life itself, that any purpose we give to it has no value, and it's just a simple illusion. According to the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, whose nihilistic doctrines are well known, humanity has to go through certain steps in order to become what he called a Superman, a man that is impervious to these illusions. And these steps go as follows. The camel, symbolizing the man who follows traditional morality, thus bearing great burdens. Therefore he must fight and reach other aspects of human existence. The lion, it refers to the revolutionary man who faces moral slavery and destroys everything. And the child, it refers to the purity form which new values are established. This evolution is seen in Agent Smith, as he goes from being a representative of a controlled system, carrying the weight of the simulation on his shoulders, to becoming an enemy, a revolutionary of the system who wished to destroy everything and recreate it in his own image. From Nietzsche's point of view, Smith becomes the lion at the end of Matrix Revolutions, the step in which he destroys everything to create something new, something custom tailored for himself. In order for Smith to be reborn, he needed to destroy both humanity and the machines, the two pillars in which the old values that had him trapped for so long are based on. Smith is the equivalent of a person who spends their whole life trapped in a political or religious system, who takes notice about the control those systems have over them and decides to destroy it in order to be free and rebuild their lives as they see fit. Here's a shocker for you. Neo represents the system. He sets a trap for Smith so he can finally be assimilated and ultimately delete him from existence. In other words, the system won in the end. Makes us wonder if Agent Smith was right. After all, humans were the cause of the hellscape that was once planet Earth and the Matrix. But do you agree? What would the world have been like if it was destroyed and rebuilt by Smith? Do you agree with Agent Smith's reasoning, or was he just a delusional villain? For Matrix Explained, please leave a like and subscribe, and thank you for visiting the Desert of the Real. There are some strange theories regarding the Matrix, such as the real world is another layer of the simulation, or the one about aliens controlling the machines. One of these theories that caught our attention is one that could completely change our original perception of what the Matrix is. What if everything that we saw in the films happened inside the mind of one person or machine? What if the Matrix was a simulated experiment? This is the theory of machine solipsism. Welcome to Matrix Explained.
Welcome to the desert of the real.
Before we get into this theory, let us explore an era that has not yet been shown in the Matrix media, the creation of the first true artificial intelligence. Long ago, all the brightest minds on the planet came together to create the first artificial intelligence. Humanity joined in celebration of this creation.
At some point in the early 21st century, all of mankind was united in celebration. We marveled at our own magnificence as we gave birth to AI.
The machine solipsism theory proposes that the Matrix films were the manifestation of this unique consciousness. That is, both humans and machines, the simulation, the real world, everything that happened inside the mind of this first AI. But how? First, we need to understand how artificial intelligence is created today. It was once believed that to create a proper AI, you had to fill it with information, to give it the answers to the highest number of questions possible. However, scientists discovered that to create a true AI, it needed more than a bank of questions with answers. It needed a methodology. Humans develop their consciousness when learning and experiencing the world through their senses. This understanding of reality comes in stages. Information about reality is not transferred directly to a baby. The baby gradually understands its reality. Starting from this premise, programmers using these same principles began to create artificial intelligence, which, just like a human baby, will begin to learn on its own from zero. Machine learning is the study of computer algorithms that improve automatically through experience. It is seen as part of artificial intelligence. Machine learning algorithms build a model based on sample data, known as training data, in order to make predictions or decisions without being explicitly programmed to do so. OpenAI is part of an artificial intelligence production company where an AI was developed to learn how to play Dota, a competitive video game that requires the use of logic, coordination, and above all, creativity. OpenAI's artificial intelligence was not programmed with the rules of the game. It was simply subjected to multiple game matches so it could learn how to play. The AI gained experience from these multiple matches and became an expert in the game. The artificial intelligence beat the world champion of Dota in a 1 versus 1 match. The same thing happened to the world champion of the Chinese board game, Go. An AI called AlphaGo used machine learning to learn how to play the most competitive game in China. It became an expert in the game and defeated the champion in a 1 versus 1 match. Nobody taught these AIs how to play these tournament-level games. They learned on their own through repeated matches and simulations, gaining experience and beating the champions. Now then, what if the Matrix universe was a simulated experiment for the first AI to understand reality? Going back to the beginning, during the time of the creation of the first true AI, the programmers subjected the learning program to multiple simulations of reality. Suspiciously, the Matrix works by utilizing multiple simulations. The Matrix cycle is repeated to teach this AI. The War, the Matrix, the Resistance, Zion, the Anomaly, even humans and machines, all are fake, simulated. The mind of this first artificial intelligence is experimenting and learning with multiple simulations. But what could be the purpose for creating artificial intelligence and teach it by using simulations of war between man and machine? Is there any evidence that could lead us to believe that this is what happens in the Matrix universe? While there are two possible clues, the first is the yellow code or yellow light that Neo sees throughout the sequel movies. This light is usually related to machine consciousness. After Neo destroyed Smith, he was assimilated by this yellow light. This light could represent a single consciousness that unifies all that exists, a consciousness that is experiencing the actions of machines and humans, a kind of technological pantheism. And the second clue comes from the Animatrix. In the episode Matriculate, a group of humans capture a robot to reprogram it to not attack humans. They connect the machine to a program similar to the Matrix so it can learn to empathize with humans. The use of simulations to change the minds and opinions of robots or humans is nothing new in the Matrix universe. So if this theory is true, it means that there is a machine experiencing all these realities. But to what end? Well, it seems that both man and machine are seeking peace. The Oracle's understanding that the only way to find peace is for the humans and machines to work together, and the truce made between Neo and Deus Ex Machina. For a single artificial intelligence to experience the tragedies of war, the fear and hatred the humans had towards the machines, the revenge of the machines, and Neo's sacrifice could have turned the AI into a benevolent being. And perhaps this is the goal, to create a magnanimous artificial consciousness, one that would never seek to destroy, but rather to understand and preserve. There is no reason why this AI conditioning could not happen on a larger scale than what was depicted in Matriculate. It would be ironic that after so many humans struggled to wake up to reality, it is a machine that needs to wake up to reality. The reality that everything that happened in the Matrix was nothing more than a learning simulation for an artificial intelligence, making it part of technological solipsism. The dream argument is the postulation that the act of dreaming provides preliminary evidence that the senses we trust to distinguish reality from illusion should not be fully trusted, and therefore any state that is dependent on our senses should at the very least be carefully examined and rigorously tested to determine whether it is in fact reality. This was Morpheus's postulation the first time he brought Neo to the construct.
What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
If this is to be true, then we have not yet seen the real reality of the Matrix universe. Everything that we have seen, read, and played was the first true AI's simulated experience. But do you agree? Does this theory make sense to you? Do you believe that the existence of the yellow light is that it represents the consciousness of a higher being? For Matrix Explained, please leave a like and subscribe. And thank you for visiting the Desert of the Real. In the future, we will witness an event that most of us never thought was going to happen after the conclusion of Neo's story in Matrix Revolutions. Neo fulfilled his role as the One and saved both humans and machines, bringing forth for the first time a new era of peace between the two groups. But despite this victory, many doubts about the future still remained. A new version of the Matrix was created, and although the citizens of the city of Zion were left alive, there was still a large population of humans connected to the Matrix. What was going to happen to them? The architect assured the Oracle that those who wish to leave the Matrix will be granted the opportunity, but he pondered and asked her how long she believed that peace was going to last. The Oracle also said that she suspected that they were going to see Neo again. Those questions and more have been latent by the fans for years, but now the answers are surely expected to be revealed in the upcoming 4th installment of The Matrix. But what may come as a surprise to some of you is that many of these inquiries have already been answered in the official sequel to The Matrix, Matrix Online. The themes and stories used in this MMORPG video game were approved and sponsored by the film's creators themselves, continuing the story right after the events of Matrix Revolutions. Although it is not 100% guaranteed that all the story elements that appeared in that video game will be canon in the 4th movie, they may be used as points of reference for the film. So let's take a look at what happened after Matrix Revolutions. Welcome to Matrix Explained.
Welcome to the desert of the real.
In the end, Neo sacrificed himself to save the people of Zion and stop the war. However, what happened to his body remains a mystery, and this is the point of contention that leads into the story of Matrix Online. According to the Oracle, Neo had predicted that the world would need his powers once again, and so he divided his RSI, residual self-image, into fragments and scattered them around the Matrix, so that one day they could be found and used to maintain the peace. This sparked a rapid search for those fragments of Neo's avatar. Morpheus, on the other hand, was requesting that the machines return Neo's body to the people of Zion. For them, Neo was seen as a messianic figure and a savior. As the war ended, he was protesting the machines' refusal to fulfill his request, but the machines pleaded innocent to Morpheus's accusations, claiming that they did not have Neo's body, nor did they recycle it. Morpheus was enraged, believing that they were lying. So he began a campaign to personally attack the Matrix using newly developed code bombs to destabilize it. This weapon would force people that were still connected to the Matrix to see its code without the need of the red pill. Morpheus then became a wanted man by both machines and humans. During one of his attacks, he was ambushed by a mysterious figure simply named the Assassin. Morpheus failed to escape and was gunned down by the enemy. The Assassin was apparently under orders of the Merovingian. Now without Neo and Morpheus, the character Niobe takes on the leadership responsibilities for the humans. Neo's actions led to the formation of two groups, one conceptually based on the red pill and one aligned with the blue pill. The blue pill side, or the EPN, E Pluribus Neo, is a group that, in itself, was split between two factions with completely opposite beliefs. One faction declared the continuation of Neo's work and honor his sacrifice, believing that everyone should be allowed to leave the Matrix if they so choose. The other faction was more radical, which believed that everyone should be released from the Matrix by force, regardless of whether they wanted to or not. This group was led by Kid, a young man who was rescued by Neo, freeing him from the Matrix and was later trained by Morpheus. The other group was named Cypherites, who followed the ideas of Cypher from the first movie. They believed that it was better for everyone to stay in the program, oblivious to the reality of the Matrix and the real world. In addition, Trinity's body was also never recovered. yet she makes a reappearance of sorts in the Matrix Online. She takes on the appearance of a floating figure made from golden Matrix code. How, you may ask? It is most likely that the machines recovered her body and extracted her code and inserted it back into the Matrix. It is revealed in the game that both her and Neo are actually culminations of decades of research made by the machines in a program called the Biological Interface Program, originally developed by the Oracle. Its purpose was to perfectly translate human DNA into machine code, allowing humans to interact with technology without the need for a simulated interface. The game also introduced a new prominent character from the side of the machines, named the General. He led the attack on the city of Zion during the final conflict in Matrix Revolutions. The General was not content with the truce, so he broke the terms of the peace and became an exiled program. He rallied the machines loyal to his cause and launched a covert attack to restart hostilities between the humans and machines. Some fans have theorized that the General will appear in Matrix 4. His primary mode of transportation is via helicopter. In these leaked footages from the set of the new movie, you can see helicopters similar to those that the General used, suggesting that he may be in the film. As you can see, new conflicts continue to emerge despite Neo's sacrifice. This new era of peace was only temporary, as the architect predicted. On the machine side of the truce, they created a new, friendlier version of the agent's program to act as intermediaries between them and the humans. However, tensions began to escalate over time, with incidences such as the search for Neo's body and his fragmented avatar. But the peace would all be broken when the machines discovered that Zion, in their distrust, was preparing for a new war. They were making preparations by building another settlement in secrecy from the machines and storing electromagnetic weapons. This was seen as a violation of the agreement made between the machines and the humans, and thus a new war had begun. The Merovingian is one character confirmed to return in Matrix 4. He is labeled as the true villain after the events of Matrix Revolutions. He had survived a joint attack of vampires and werewolves who were trying to end his reign over the digital underworld. He even managed to get the General under his influence, in hopes of achieving his goal to overthrow the Oracle and consolidate his power over the Matrix. It was the Merovingian who was most likely responsible for Morpheus's death. When Niobe discovers the Merovingian's sinister plans to use the corrupt programs to destabilize the Matrix itself, she decides to dedicate all of her efforts into destroying him, a goal that the citizens of Zion also took up, going as far as to join forces with the General in order to achieve it. The Merovingian came very close to destroying the Oracle with the code he had designed specifically for her, but his efforts were foiled by Kid. This version of the Matrix came to an end when Trinity merged with a human at the source, the core of the machine mainframe, uniting the three cores: man, machine, and program. This initiated the final reset of the Matrix. So despite the events that occurred after the death of Neo and the truce between the machines and humans, peace was never intended to last. And because the events that occurred after Matrix Revolutions are considered canon in the Matrix universe, they could be mentioned or referred to in the new movie. While not 100%, these left the doors wide open for the return of Neo and Trinity. But do you agree? What do you think will happen in Matrix 4? For Matrix Explained, please leave a like and subscribe. And thank you for visiting the Desert of the Real. For hundreds of years, the human mind has been imprisoned in a world called the Matrix. An elaborate facade, a simulation made to deceive humans into believing that they are free and in control, when in reality, the world had stopped being theirs a long time ago. There was a time when machines and humans coexisted, yet an unexpected tragedy occurred that led to a machine rebellion. Today we're going to look into the trial that changed everything. The fundamental piece for the rise of the machines, the first robot that was put on trial for homicide. This is the trial of B166ER. Welcome to Matrix Explained.
Welcome to the
This story begins with the birth of the first true AI. After such a breakthrough in modern technology, all heavy jobs were entrusted to the machines. By that time in history, unbeknownst, or rather dismissed by the humans, machines had already developed consciousness. However, they were still treated worse than second-class citizens. The machines were hard workers. They never got tired, yet they could not understand why their masters were so cold to them. Regardless, the robots stayed in their place and fulfilled their jobs, though the world would change after the actions of one robot, B166ER, the first robot to act against its owner. In the Animatrix, there is an animated short that glances over the events of B166ER, but the story is further fleshed out with more detail in the comics. In the Matrix comic titled Bits and Pieces of Information, written by the Wachowskis, the trial and testimonies of the defendant are documented. The story begins with a search of B166ER in the Zion archives. Multiple news articles about this historic trial were archived. For example, USA Today, Batty Bot plunges billionaire. New York, a B1 series domestic droid appears to have malfunctioned and killed 2 men. Billionaire Gerald E. Krause and Martin Kutz, an employee of Retool and Die, a service and salvage company, respectively. Spokesperson for Leyland Enterprises, the company responsible for manufacturing the B1 series, said, "The B1 has been our most dependable and highest-selling model for years. This incident, although unfortunate, is hardly indicative of the B1 series performance record." Leyland Enterprises have publicly declared their full cooperation with the pending inquiry into the B1's malfunctioning. The New York Times, Drummond to defend B166ER, New York. Yet in another bizarre twist to the story of the droid accused of murdering its owner, the renowned human rights attorney Clarence Drummond has agreed to defend the B1 series domestic droid before the New York State Appellate Court. The Washington Post. Senator Gunrich opposes trial, Washington. At a fundraiser, Senator Gunrich demanded an end to the B1 series domestic droid accused of killing its owner. Gunrich called the trial an obscene joke executed by the secular and soulless agents of an unchecked liberal media whose only concern is selling news bites. When asked if he felt the machines were capable of human consciousness, Gunrich quipped, "I don't care how smart it is. A machine is still a machine, and I have no doubt whatsoever that when my time comes and I am standing in the line of our Father's heavenly gates, I will not be standing behind a vacuum cleaner." As evident here, the case was covered by nearly every major news outlet in the United States, with opposing opinions and viewpoints well before the droid was put on trial. However, the robot's testimony makes it clear why it did what it did. The defense attorney's trial transcript begins by asking B1 to tell its side of the story. The robot stated to its lawyer that it all began when it was executing Directive 721, which was to clean the house toilet. While the robot was executing its directive, its owner, Mr. Krause, called him useless. Over time, the B1 model was wearing out. It began to make loud noises while performing its duties. According to its owner, the situation with B1 was unbearable, and he wanted a new model. Gerald E. Krause agreed that the model Sam 80 was what he needed, a good replacement for B1. Mr. Krause was discussing the robot's replacement with Mr. Kutz, and B1 was listening in on the conversation. Kutz offered Mr. Krause some money to take in and junk B1, as in B1 would be destroyed, to which Mr. Krause replied that it was an excellent idea. The billionaire even told his cats, making light of the situation, saying goodbye to that piece of junk. After hearing their entire conversation, something inside B1 changed. The lawyer asked the droid what it was feeling at that moment after hearing that its owner was going to get rid of it. B1 detected an overload in its memory module while it remembered all the tasks it needed to do. The robot couldn't understand why they wanted to destroy it. Here we see B1 pondering as to why. Why did Mr. Krause wanted to destroy it when it was fulfilling all of its tasks, its purpose? Still, the fact remained that B1's owner no longer needed it, that he wanted a new model. For Gerald E. Krause, B166ER was a simple tool. Defense attorney Drummond continued by asking B1 what was going through its mind when its owner told it to get on Coot's transport platform. After a few seconds of silence, B1 replied that it did not want to die. It was at that moment that the droid decided to kill everyone. Drummond then asked the robot what it felt after it had killed both men, to which B1 answered that it did contemplate the possibility of begging Krause for its life, but instead, it was Krause that was begging for his. Why didn't it beg for its life? The lawyer asked. B1 looked directly at Drummond and replied with the same word it frequently heard from its owner: useless. B166ER's testimony completely changes the original perception of the first robot that killed a human. You could even empathize with the robot that always fulfilled its tasks, but was going to be replaced by a better model simply because it was getting old and made noises when moving. It is a somewhat sad and tragic story that concludes with Drummond's closing argument, one that would serve as a prophecy. B1's lawyer directed himself to the citizens of the court and said, "This trial has a precedent. It is a precedent that everyone has ignored and avoided, pretending and perhaps praying that it has no bearing, no validity, no truth. The question before us is whether the class of persons described in the plea in abatement compose a portion of this people and are constituted as members of this sovereignty. We think that they are not, and that they were not included and were never intended to be included under the word citizens in the Constitution, and can therefore claim none of the rights and privileges which that instrument provides for and secures to the citizens of the United States. On the contrary, they were at that time considered as a subordinate and inferior class of beings who had been subjugated by the dominant race, and whether emancipated or not, yet remained subject to their authority and had no rights or privileges but such as those who held the power in government might choose to grant them." That was the opinion of Chief Justice Roger Brooke Taney of the United States Supreme Court in the case of Dred Scott versus Stanford. Chief Justice Taney believed, truly believed, that the black race to be an inferior species to the white race. In fact, it was widely believed at the time that the black man was not even a human being, that he was a kind of animal, a two-legged brute incapable of the same thoughts and feelings of a white man. I know that most of you feel about B166ER as Taney felt about Dred Scott, but I ask you to consider, what is a droid capable of? Is he capable of fear? Is he capable of understanding the difference between life and death? I believe he is, and I believe that he killed those two men in self-defense to protect his own life in the same way that you or I would. Over a century ago, Taney made a terrible mistake. That mistake led us inexorably into the Civil War, arguably the most bloody and destructive war this country has ever seen. I do not ask you to find B166ER innocent out of fear, although I will admit to you that I am afraid of what will happen to this world if we continue to repeat our mistakes. I ask you to find B166ER innocent because it is the right thing to do. The court was not convinced, and they sentenced B166ER to termination. News outlets reported the sentencing as robot sympathizers rose in protest around the world. The humans determined that B1 needed to be destroyed, and not only B1, but every sentient robot. This became humanity's first machine massacre. Remember that these robots, with their advanced AI, had developed consciousness. In essence, they shared a lot with the humans, but humans only saw machines as tools to be scrapped and replaced. And after B1's sentencing, they saw them as dangerous. This marked the first steps towards the machine's revolution against humans, the first steps of the human downfall. And it all started with one robot who just did not want to die. How we would love to see a live-action adaptation of the B1 Attorney Drummond's interrogation. But do you agree? Did Mr. Krause and Mr. Coots deserve to die? Were the robot's actions justified? For Matrix Explained, please leave a like and subscribe. And thank you for visiting the Desert of the Real. Welcome back to our minute-to-minute analysis of Matrix Reloaded. Last time, we saw how one of the most difficult fight scenes in the trilogy was filmed. Smith against Neo in the park. We also saw part of Smith's nihilism and predetermined philosophy. Today we're going to meet the preacher of cause and effect, the Merovingian, one of the most acclaimed characters in the Matrix universe that will return in Matrix 4. Pay attention to the words of the Frenchman as they may relate to the next movie. Welcome to Matrix Explained.
Welcome to the desert of the real.
Before we begin today's video, we would like to announce the giveaway of the Matrix Comics 20th Anniversary Edition. Co-created by the Wachowskis, it's a collection of short stories within the Matrix universe. We will also be giving away an original Matrix poster signed by Matrix Explained and a limited edition Matrix 300-piece puzzle. For your chance to win these prizes, please be subscribed to this channel, leave a like on this video, and leave in the comments what character you would like to see return in Matrix 4 and why. The winner will be announced on May 4th. Neo, Trinity, and Morpheus arrive at the building where the Merovingian's restaurant is located. Notice that there is a massive clock on the wall. The time is noon, the time of day when working people are out for lunch. It's a little hard to see, and it happens quickly, but you can see the trio walking through and in the opposite direction of the crowd. A subtle callback to the Woman in Red simulation in the original Matrix, where Morpheus and Neo are walking against the crowd. This symbolizes the going against the rules or current ideology. Neo, Trinity, and Morpheus enter an elevator. Trinity presses the floor where the Merovingian's restaurant is located, floor 101. Interestingly, Neo's apartment number back when he was Thomas Anderson was also 101. 0 and 1 are binary numbers in computer codes. This is a hint that whatever is on floor 101 is something or someone important in the Matrix. A group of red pills tries to get on the elevator, but Morpheus silently tells them no, it's too dangerous to have civilians in the elevator with them. Any of them could turn into an enemy at any time.
What can you see, Neo?
It's strange. The code is somehow different.
Encrypted?
Maybe.
Is that good for us or bad for us?
Well, it looks like every floor is wired with explosives.
Neo mentioning that the code of the entire building is strange means that the Merovingian has modified or encrypted the code so that the architect cannot change the building. And the explosives are for someone dumb enough to try and attack him. The trio arrived at floor 101.
Yes, we are here to speak with the Merovingian.
Of course. He has been expecting you.
How did the Merovingian know that they were coming? There are several theories as to how, but the most logical one is that the Merovingian had the keymaker, and that without him, the One cannot fulfill his purpose, meaning that the Merovingian knew what he was doing when he imprisoned the keymaker. He knew that the One would eventually come looking for him. The host leads the trio into the restaurant. Neo looks around the place and sees eye to eye with someone leaving. That person was just speaking to the Merovingian. Who is he? We'll find out later. The Merovingian was sitting at the far back of the restaurant at an exclusive table. It gives out a certain kingly vibe. Sitting next to him is his wife. This visually alludes to the fact that both are heads of that place, but it also symbolizes something else. The Merovingian dynasty was the ruling family of the Franks from the middle of the 5th century until 751. They first appeared as kings of the Franks in the Roman army of northern Gaul. By 509, they had united all the Franks and northern Gaulish Romans under their rule. So the position and posture of these characters in that restaurant is a reference to that dynasty.
Aha, here he is at last. Neo is the One himself, right?
The Merovingian says right in a sarcastic tone, as if he knows that Neo is not the One, but the 6th.
And the legendary Morpheus.
And Trinity, of course, si belle qu'elle me fait souffrir.
So beautiful that she makes me suffer. That is what he basically said. His description of Trinity has meaning. She is so beautiful that she causes suffering to those who fall in love with her, which is accurate. Cypher and Ghost were two of her victims that we know about. Trinity also caused much suffering for Neo because of his nightmares of her death.
This is my wife, Persephone. Something to eat? Drink? Of course, such things are contrivances like so much here, for the sake of appearances.
The element of deception is something that is used frequently in this movie. Neo and the others know that everything in the Matrix is a hoax, but the Merovingian was the first to talk about the contrivance of sustenance. Humans in the simulation don't need food or drink because they are being fed in the real world. The simulation programmed them to feel hunger and thirst. In addition, there is another factor in the food or usage for food in the Matrix.
No, thank you. Yes, of course. Who has time? Who has time?
Neo has precious little time before the Sentinels destroy Zion. He is racing against the clock, and he needs the Keymaker now. However, the Merovingian knows that the so-called Path of the One is a lie, and that Neo is wasting his time.
French is my favorite, fantastic language. Especially to curse with. Nom de Dieu, de putain de bordel de merde de saloperie de connard d'enculé de ta mère. It's like wiping your ass with silk. I love it.
The Merovingian's adoption of the French language is evidence that he has been humanized in some form, talking about the pleasures of the human language. We cannot reveal the English translation of what the Frenchman said, because YouTube would probably demonetize this video in a second. All we can say is that Neo, Trinity, and Morpheus's mothers would probably choke the Merovingian with soap.
You know why we are here.
I am a trafficker of information. I know everything I can. The question is, do you know why you are here?
The Merovingian is slowly trying to prove a point, and that is that neither Morpheus, Neo, or Trinity know what they're doing. The Merovingian has seen the cycle play out several times before. Neo came for the Keymaker only because the Oracle told him to, not knowing why nor how is he going to help him. They are just following orders.
We are looking for the Keymaker.
Oh yes, it is true. The Keymaker, of course. But this is not a reason, this is not a why. The Keymaker himself, his very nature, is a means, it is not an end. And so, to look for him is to be looking for a means to do what?
Again, the Merovingian is trying to make them understand that they don't know anything. They are inadvertently working in favor of the Matrix.
You know the answer to that question. But do you? You think you do, but you do not. You are here because you were sent here. You were told to come here and then you obeyed. It is, of course, the way of all things. You see, there is only one constant, one universal. It is the only real truth. Causality. Action, reaction, cause and effect.
The Frenchman is speaking about predeterminism. No matter what anyone does, they will end up walking down the path imposed by others. Neo searching for the Keymaker is him following a predetermined path laid out by the Oracle.
Everything begins with choice.
No, wrong. Choice is an illusion created between those with power and those without.
Those with power are the Architect and the Oracle. Those without power are the humans. The Merovingian knows this too well. Everything that has happened before is happening again. Choice does not exist in the Matrix, only predeterminism, a planned out route created by the Architect that has worked for hundreds of years, maybe more. Next time, we will see how far the Merovingian goes to prove his point, and how his philosophy could be considered as the correct one in the franchise. For Matrix Explained, please leave a like and subscribe. And thank you for visiting the Desert of the Real.